Hello, and welcome to an honest conversation about AI adoption with Charlotte Dixon. And today we have the incredible Tony Battle with us to discuss AI in the workplace and generally in life. So, welcome, Tony. Thanks for joining.
You're very welcome, Sean. It's great to be here.
And for anyone who may not have heard of you, unlikely, but can you tell us a bit about your background?
Of course, absolutely. So I would consider myself a technologist. I've been in leadership roles around the deployment and the operation of technology for a good part of 25 years. Cool, that makes me cringe a little bit. Most recently, I am the former CIO for Jaguar Landrover. And before that, I worked for Shell and I worked for E&I and Anglo American. So quite a diverse portfolio of roles, but always in a kind of like CIO capacity, either delivering change or driving innovation, but always looking after operations.
Mm.
And I'm also a trustee for the Alzheimer's Society
Amazing.
with their technology agenda. So I feel really privileged about that.
You're a handy person to have around for sure. Brilliant. And that's such a sort of like range of experience. And I'm really glad that you came on this. I was going to call it podcast. It's not a podcast yet, but this video series. And actually, I especially was excited about this episode being our first because it was a conversation with you that really was the catalyst to me doing this. I was having a conversation about all these interesting conversations I was having with leaders and their teams about digital mindset and sort of how you adopt AI in business. And we were having a really thought-provoking conversation, and you said, well, you should go for it, you should call it an honest conversation. So I can thank you for the title. But yeah, tell me enough about me, tell me a bit more about how you found AI adoption in business and what you're noticing about what people are managing or not managing.
Yeah, no, that's a really great segue. So I think back to the conversation we had. It's very much about people. It's very much about the human aspect and the human consideration.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really really mindful and thoughtful about that because I think we're all wrestling with the reality of what is AI and how do we adopt it and how do we bring it into it's not just the workplace, bring it into our lives. I mean, all aspects of society. And then what does that mean for us as people, as human beings, as society? And I personally don't have the answers to that. I really struggle with it, if I'm honest. So if I get into the kind of fine detail in terms of helping understand and answer your question, I think in the workplace, my most recent experience has been one of the observing and feeling a real desire and appetite and ambition to consume AI and on board with it and utilize it and try and get value out of it. And that's usually hugely positive, hugely positive.
Yeah.
You want your partners and your peers in an organization to want to adopt technology. So the fact that there's that pull is amazing, right? I think the challenge from a CIO and CTO perspective is often how do you realize that ambition and how do you deliver at speed with value that's going to be able to meet the expectations of the people that want it, which is a nice problem to have in many ways, but it's quite overwhelming because this thing that's kind of just arrived in the last 2 or 3 years, AI, it's already morphed and grown and evolved so much in those 3 years. You know, what started as this generative AI wave 2.5 years ago has now just rapidly moved into agentic and so on. So the thing that we are being asked to adopt and on board with is just evolving.
Like weekly, isn't it? It's not even like yearly, it's weekly.
It's
Yeah.
astonishing. I think the pace of change and evolution is just phenomenal. So I think whether you are a technologist and being asked to deploy it, whether you are someone that is running a business or part of a business and you're looking for opportunity to find space for AI, I think the challenge of understanding what it is, but where it fits and how it complements and how it augments, or maybe in some cases replaces, is a big challenge. I think back to a conversation I had with a room of people about a year ago. It was a Gartner event, and I'd been asked to open the afternoon session at a Gartner event that was basically 300, 400 CIOs that were gathering to talk about all kinds of technology things. And I opened the afternoon session. So, it's post lunch, everyone's coming back into the room. I'm thinking I need to do just a little bit of an icebreaker just to get people's attention back in the space. So as everyone sat down, I asked the audience to put your hand up if you are accountable or responsible in your organisation for the deployment and running of AI. And you, as expected, almost everybody in the room put their hand up. And then I asked them, keep your hand up if you know what it is that you're dealing with. And I would say that almost every hand went down. There was probably, 4 or 5 people that kept their hand up. That's a really powerful, honest perspective from a group of technology professionals who, we're being asked to do this, but we don't really know what it is that we're doing or what we're going to do with it. And I think that's probably a good indicator of reality.
Yeah.
Really. It's
That's,
going to be how I feel.
yeah, that's so interesting. I think it really parallels what I'm finding as well in, lots of coaching conversations and these workshops that I run, is that there's definitely a pressure people feel, especially senior leaders actually, to adopt and be at the forefront of AI adoption, when the reality is actually it's really difficult to know where to start. And even big corporations that have tech teams, their tech teams are saying, okay, what do you need? And the leaders are saying, what have you got? And sometimes there's a disconnect, but sometimes even when technology is tried out, it doesn't quite work, or it doesn't work the way you expected it to. So, and it's not to say that AI can't be really powerful. I'm a real advocate for people really trying and experimenting and learning. But the reality is, I think that people feel their competitors are way ahead of them. And I'm sort of a bit skeptical, because so far I sort of say to every leader I meet when I'm having these conversations, I've yet to meet a leader that feels like they've got it all figured out. It just doesn't seem, it just feels a bit unrealistic. It feels unrealistic to have that expectation on ourselves. We should of course keep striving for greater knowledge and being able to use these tools as effectively as possible. But yeah, it seems like a tall order to expect it to all happen straight away.
Yeah, I think whether it's AI or another form of technology or something else, actually, there's a hype cycle that happens.
Yeah.
And there's a very profound hype cycle that we're still in, right? And you can see the wave over the last 2 or 3 years about how it's developed. And within that, there's been periods of real hot air, smoke and mirrors, no shortage of certainly vendors and organisations offering new AI capabilities and new AI services. It's almost as if everybody's now invented a flavour or a form of AI to either augment or replace an existing service model. And I think as consumers, whether it's in the workplace or in the kind of home life, it's quite overwhelming. Can we really consume all of this new AI offering and service capability? And what's the differentiation? And also, what is it it's going to do for us? And it's almost like we're being sold something that everybody feels compelled to jump on and consume. and there isn't much space to kind of pause and step back and go, actually, why do I need that? And actually, what is it going to do for me? So I think there's a reality there about selling and marketing, and we've all been exposed to that. I also think there's a reality which is really, again, really positive. There is a culture that is just formed around people wanting to test it and people wanting to try it and consume it because they see it as a positive.
Yeah.
And again, that's brilliant, right? As a technologist, to have that kind of receptive audience and that desire to accommodate is really, really helpful. But I do think there's a missing piece of DNA within all of that, which is about education. We don't really know on the whole what it is that we are talking about or we are leaning into. And I think we would all benefit from learning about the different types of AI and the different applications and the different value propositions. And that's why I think that we shouldn't shy away from leaning into others that are maybe more experienced, or maybe you've already tried things and failed and learned, and asking for their perspectives. And I think that's a really positive mindset to go into this. Ask others what they've done, ask for advice, look for advocacy, look for allyship. Really helpful, really helpful.
I love that. I think collaboration is going to be key. Even within organizations, I say to people, how are you collaborating? Because there is so much opportunity out there with AI, but also to learn from others' mistakes, I think is a time saver, and it makes everyone more efficient. And you discover different things. I think with different people discover different things about different tools. So, and it's interesting you said that about learning about different types of AI, because often when we talk about AI, people automatically think ChatGPT. And I actually was out for dinner with my mum and a few of her friends the other day, and she said to me, she's retired, and she said, I don't use AI. And they were like, no, I don't use AI. And I said, yeah, but I think your car does. And I think you'll find your phone does. So actually, you sort of are using AI. You're just not using it in a sort of maybe you're not so aware you're using it, but it's happening. It is, you are using it, which I thought was quite funny. But one question I really wanted to ask you was, what advice would you give leaders in terms of supporting people to adopt AI, or even adopting AI themselves?
I think it's really important to give a space for people within an organisation, a place to try it in a safe way. So you can almost sandbox it. So Copilot in Microsoft Teams, as an example, is a really good example of a tool set and a capability that you can readily deploy in a safe environment that is going to be familiar to a degree to the kind of user community. It's going to lean into and consume data and information assets that are already known to the user community. So, and it provides a set of capabilities that are going to be profoundly impactful in terms of productivity. And I think that's a relatively safe space to give people to play. And of course, you could look to other technology examples to be able to do that. But I think the point I'm trying to make is if you can create a safe space that's ring fenced, that allows people to do something meaningful and create impact, but doesn't necessarily introduce risk to the wider organisation, that's a great space to start. And I've seen a lot of organisations do that with real impact. And then you can start to see where the value proposition is, whether it's on productivity, whether it's on saving time, whether it's on allowing people and teams to focus on other more meaningful things. And that safe environment allows you to give people a space to play without too much pressure, which I think is really important.
That's so interesting. I think I hear a lot about human oversight needed for AI, and that actually the responsibility and the risk sits with the human that's using it, which is totally understandable. But when you're in an organization and that could be your job on the line, that's quite terrifying. So I really love that idea of having a sort of an opportunity to test and try without those negative consequences, because ultimately I think fear sort of squashes creativity really and innovation. So you kind of need a safe space.
Making mistakes is such a big part of the learning process. And if we're all being really honest with ourselves about we don't quite know what this AI thing is yet or where it fits or how we use it, the only way to truly get to that is by exploration and testing and trying things and assuming that we're going to make mistakes. And that's part of the process. It has to be part of the process. And I think just to add some colour around that, it's really important, I believe, to take a position that this is not a tech team outcome. It's not a CIO outcome. It's a organisational outcome. And it's really important that there's an element of whatever AI is as a piece of technology that sits within a tech stack. So it's got the right controls and the right kind of governance around it. So you can manage the risk. But ultimately, as a set of capabilities, as a toolbox, it should be free to be used within an organisation so that people can work with it and play with it and learn about it and deliver value. And that drives for a partnership and collaboration between the tech team and whatever the business is in the wider business. Yeah, big believer in that.
I guess that sort of it's interesting because we're talking about AI and technology, but that's sort of the case with everything, isn't it, in organizations, that it can't just be top down. It kind of has to be, you need some feedback to be able to develop things. And yeah, I think that's really interesting as well, because there's something about ownership here and who takes responsibility for the organization moving forward. And really, in an ideal world, it's sort of everybody's bought into the journey and the destination. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having a chat with me and this honest conversation. I really appreciate your time.